All right.
Looks like we're live.
We're live.
Welcome, one and all. You are community team hangout. We do this regularly since Jono left. I think we can stop talking about Jono after a while. We've been doing these community team hangouts. So far, we've had all of us on each hangout. We'll talk more about how we're going to mix that up a little bit later on. But just to introduce everyone, you've got Daniel Holbach, David Planella, Nicholas Skaggs, Mike Hall, and myself, Alan Pope. We are live via ubuntuonair.com. If you have any questions, you can jump in the IRC channel on Freenode. The IRC channel is #ubuntu-on-air. Or if you just go to ubuntuonair.com, there's a little chat thing down the bottom. Sign in there and ask your questions there. So we didn't have a huge amount to talk about this week, so get your questions in. We did have a couple of things we wanted to mention. As I said, the first thing was how we're going to change and mix this up a little bit. Rather than have all of us take an hour out of our day, we figured it would be more productive for a smaller number of us to do this each week. So we'll still do it every week, but a smaller number of us, and we'll take it in turns so you don't get sick of seeing the same people all the time. But what we plan on doing is getting other people on this hangout as well. Those could be people from the community, they could be developers, translators, people writing documentation, and I'll just throw my phone away. Or people from within Canonical or people outside Canonical. Basically, you let us know who you think we should get on the hangout, and we'll do our best to get them on. If we don't get any suggestions, then we'll nominate people and volunteer them to join us. But if you do, then we'll do our best to get those people on, subject to their schedules and time zone stuff. Does that sound about right, everyone?
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant idea. Yeah, I think we could, there's obvious targets, like everyone has a question for Mark, I guess, or for Rick, or for Ollie. I think it's great to bring them on, also bring on some server and cloud folks, but maybe it would also be interesting to get somebody from, I don't know, the sales team, or teams. We often don't even know what exactly they do, or how a typical day of work works for them, like what they do. So that might be interesting as well.
Yeah, awesome. As I said, people in the community as well. People, great stuff in the community. Doesn't necessarily have to be Canonical people. It can be developers, like I say, documentation, translation people talking about awesome work that's going on in the Loco teams. Basically anyone from anywhere.
So this is where we open it up to you guys on IRC. If there's anybody inside Canonical or inside the community that you would like to get an interview from, go ahead and start posting your suggestions down below in the IRC. We've already got a couple that we've talked about bringing on. I see Belkinza's in our IRC, and she's one of them that we've talked about bringing on because she's leading the reboot of the Ubuntu Leadership Program. That was discussed in the past UDS and some more in the most recent one, the Ubuntu Online Summit.
Cool. And we've got a couple of questions already. We've got a very, very generic one, well, not generic, but very encompassing one. So Ubuntu Fan is asking, what about the Ubuntu Phone? Is it going to happen? Well, yes, it definitely will happen. So there's been quite a lot of phone activity going on, and basically all of the engineering teams, and not only engineering, but sales, marketing, the community team are very tightly focused on getting this first release out in the market. So if you followed the Ubuntu Online Summit that was happening last week, or if you haven't, you can go to summit.ubuntu.com and see the video logs. You'll see that there's quite a lot of focus on getting everything ready by what we call the RTM in August. RTM is released to manufacture, and it's essentially the date when we want to have everything ready for the phones to hit the market. The actual dates for the phones to hit the market for the manufacturers are still haven't been published yet, but essentially that's our main goal right now, to get RTM ready for us to, to have all of the engineering bits in place for this phone releases to market to happen.
For anybody who's interested in that, the two OEMs that we're going to start with are BQ in Spain and Meizu in China. So if you go and you follow their social media accounts, I know Meizu at least has been talking about it quite a bit lately, and even opened up a forum on their site dedicated to Ubuntu. So there's a lot of growing excitement in those communities as well.
All right, so we've got the next question from Riccardo Padovani. Lots of local websites are based on Drupal. Canonical is releasing a framework to create themes similar to the international one. Do you also plan to release a complete theme for Drupal? I'm not really familiar with this new framework. Mike, you're the one with most web development experience. Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I'm not sure what framework he's talking about. I do know that there is a set of Drupal themes that were developed by community members for community sites. That's on Launchpad at Ubuntu-community-web themes, I think is the project. And we've got some for Drupal. I think there's some for WordPress. There's some for Django on there. And those have been around for a while. Those aren't new. So they may need to be updated to completely match changes going on to the main Ubuntu.com. But then again, they were also always a little bit different from the main Ubuntu.com to separate canonical hosted sites from community ones. So if you're interested in a Drupal theme, there's some there you can choose from. If there's work that needs to be done, feel free to propose a merge proposal to them or try and drum up a community around them again. It used to be more active. I don't think it is anymore. Yeah.
One thing that I've noticed as well is that I'm just looking at the latest design blog posts, and I see that the design team has been some updates on their framework, and that's probably what Ricardo might have been mentioning. But I think Mike is right. Right now, from what I can see on this blog post, this what they're describing is either like framework, not framework specific, as in not tied to Drupal or WordPress or something. And when it is, I think it's tied. Yeah, actually, I cannot really tell from the blog post without reading them in more detail. But as Mike is saying, it shouldn't be too much of an effort to port this to Drupal and to contribute to the existing Drupal theme that we've got for our local sites.
And if you're interested in that, if you join #Ubuntu-website and look for either Peter or Ant, they're on the web design team in Canonical, and they can answer your questions about that because they're most likely the ones who implemented it. All right, next question from KI7YY. What is the status of systemd implementation? So I saw somebody posted booting, I think, Ubuntu server using systemd, and pretty much everything was working already. On the desktop side of things and on the phone, there's probably more work to do because things were a little bit more dependent on Upstart there. I know that there's work going on to set the stage for that transfer. They're building in abstraction layers or renaming things to create a separation between Upstart and the things Upstart's being used to drive, like launching apps on the phone, so that they can swap Upstart out for systemd in the near future. Maybe we can get one of the Foundations guys on for an interview one time about that.
I think from what I understand, the systemd stuff moved a lot faster than we were expecting after some of the changes landed in Debian, and we synced from Debian after 14.04 was released. So when 14.10 opened up, we started receiving packages from Debian that had already been modified to be systemd ready. So things moved a lot faster than we expected. But it'd probably be a good idea to get someone like Martin Pitt, I think,
Yes.
who works on systemd. Be good to get him on and chat to him about it, see what kind of challenges he's got, and so we'll add him to the list of people to approach.
Brilliant. And I have a question back for KI7YY. Why is this interesting to you? It looks like a lot of people are interested in systemd for one reason or another, but I mean, maybe I'm a boring person, but I can't think of anything more boring than booting. Like, it worked, it always worked.
Maybe you should ask Alan. I hear he's got 2 years worth of boot log charts.
Right. That would be really interesting to
certain people.
to digest over a rainy afternoon, maybe. But no, I mean, seriously, I'm really interested. Why are there any specific features you're looking forward to with the systemd? I just had a look at a link I shared on IRC. There's a list of bugs the team is currently looking into, but it looked like a lot of integration points where tools we heavily rely on don't work well with systemd right now yet. So yeah. But yeah, we should get Martin on. Good idea.
Yeah, I think for me, the only reason I care about systemd is that there is a potential for a major change like that to break things. As long as things don't break, then I really don't care.
I think a lot of the attention has come from people who are not what you might call end users, but are technical enthusiasts, and so they're interested in things like consistency from one Linux distro to another, and maybe they're working on packages that they need to test on one distro or another, and not having to worry about upstart might be a bonus for them. But from a user point of view, yeah, most people don't know an init system from a hole in the ground, and I'm one of them.
Well, for me, some of the idea of things breaking, that's exciting. Quality perspective, we like change sometimes. Like things
It keeps you in work.
Yeah, it's like sort of this secretly enjoying watching, crumbling infrastructure. No, not really, but some people are excited to test new stuff. So
Cool.
More power to them. We need more testers, right, Nick?
that's right. Find ways to break it so you don't have to deal with, said ways of breaking it. And I agree. I only want it in a certain context. I don't want it on my actual stable systems that I depend on.
All right, so Spartacus has a question. I'm going to summarize it. It's basically, what's the future of Linux gaming like? What's Ubuntu doing on that front? And how are we working with Steam to make that happen? Because he feels that it's starting to slow down or fade a little bit.
I wouldn't say it seems to have slowed down or faded, given... So the thing I've always thought, when Valve said they were supporting the Linux desktop, in my mind, it was quite obvious right back then that this was all because they were aiming to have a set-top box or a console or some kind of device that would have Linux as the sole operating system, and it would have Steam on top of it, and that happened. So now we have these upcoming Steam boxes that run Linux, and in fact, if you run Steam and you browse the store, where it used to say Windows and Mac, it now says Windows, Mac, and Linux, and even more recently, it now says Windows, Mac, and then it says SteamOS and Linux. So it's very clear that SteamOS is a big part of Valve's strategy, and it makes sense that they push developers and publishers to make their games available on SteamOS to make SteamOS a success. As a byproduct, we get those games too, because SteamOS is Linux. It's based on Debian, and so is Ubuntu. So we get the benefit of that. There's no losers there at all. And in terms of slowing down, it was 5th of June that Steam had 500 games for Linux. And I just checked this morning, it's 535 now in 10 days. It's gone up by 30. So I don't think it's slowing down at all. If anything, I think it's accelerating.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing now is, there was the big announcement, and then there was a lot of very visible things that landed. And now all of the work's happening kind of behind the scenes to finish it, and you don't see much of that. If you ever watch like a house being built, in a few days they'll get the framing up, they'll get the walls up, they'll have the roof up, and then you don't see, if you're standing on the street, you don't see much going on for the next like month or so. But they're still busy, finishing the inside of it. And I think that's what's going on right now with SteamOS and Steam support on Linux, is that they announced SteamOS, they announced these games. Now they're working on the internals to make it all the way it should be. I know they're pushing the GPU manufacturers to improve their Linux drivers to boost performance. And I think this is something that, for the most part, the GPU manufacturers haven't had to think about. Because there were not games for Linux, they didn't have to think about that specific use case and how their drivers performed for that. And now they need to, and now that's what Steam's pushing for.
And it's also, I think, a credit to them that a few years ago, Steam just didn't exist on Linux. You got to remember there was that big announcement, and now we have it. Now let's not look that gift horse in the mouth. We now have Steam. Okay, it's proprietary software that is a means for you to deliver more proprietary software on your system. But for some people, that's what they use a computer for. And to have Linux underneath all of that and working well, and I think that's admirable.
I bet you any gaming?
Yeah, well, I would just echo what Popey said. I keep seeing more and more announcements, come through about big titles being ported to Linux, or big titles that are being developed at the same time. Really, that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for announcements of, we're going to port this game that was released last year on Windows and Mac to Linux now. It's more, in the future, all of our game engine is supporting Linux out of the box. Our next version of this game is going to support, everything across the board. And that's what I see as encouraging signs that the momentum is building. So I think Popey's right. It's not faded because the longer term plans have changed to include Linux and SteamOS out of the gate, So that's the encouraging sign. And yeah, it's good for us. Whether or not you're a gamer, having people who game on your system, drives more people into using it and drives more vendors into supporting it. It's a win-win.
All right, should we take the next question then? So Belkinsa is asking, will the Evernote client for Ubuntu have the full features, such as handwritten notes, voice notes, etc., as the Windows web client? Well, I don't see any reason why it shouldn't if those features are supported in their API. However, right now our focus is on to get the basic functionality working, and that will include, sorry, and just to go back a bit, we're talking here about reminders, the Notes app for Ubuntu that is using the Evernote API, and it's running on both on the phone, you can install it from the software store, and on the desktop you can install it from the Core Apps PPA. I can give you some more details in a minute on how to do this. So yes, reminders. Right now we're focusing on getting the first version working with the basic functionality of for all the things that you need, like on your everyday with notes. That means getting the list of notes editing notes, deleting them, and essentially managing them. You can also add attachments from the camera or from an image, and also you can manage reminders and notebooks. Once we've passed the first release, we can start exploring what we can do with the API next. So in theory, yes, to answer the question, but we'd have to have a look at how well supported this or how well supported in other platforms these features are on their API.
And it's important to remember that the Evernote client is being written by volunteers right now. So the best way to get those features into it is to become a volunteer yourself, or help find other volunteers to get the work done.
That's the thing. Unlike some of the other Evernote clients, this one's free software. You can actually grab a copy of the source code and start hacking around in it yourself. There's a documented API, Evernote API, which you could implement features to support that. Knock yourself out.
Excellent. All right, so we've got another question from Ubuntu fan. I recently started studying software engineering, and I'm still ignorant in all of the developing of Ubuntu. But I really love Ubuntu and the way it's free and open source, and I really want to contribute to it with my mind, but I don't know how I can support Ubuntu. Any ideas? Well, you've just asked at the right place, I think. There's many ways in which you can support Ubuntu. I mean, you can use Ubuntu. You can join local community group to spread the word about Ubuntu. You can actually start developing Ubuntu. I think IRC right now is a good place, since you're in there. It's a good place to discuss how you want to get involved, but it's up to you. There's many ways of getting involved and contributing. You don't have to be a developer. You can. We've mentioned translators, documenters, evangelists earlier on in the call. So there's many ways. It's up to you. I mean, on how you want to do your contributions. You might want to choose something that's new to you to learn more. You might want to choose an area in which you're familiar with already, and start with that. So yeah, I mean, I'd say if you're interested in a particular area, and if you want to ask us, we can expand on that particular one. We've got a big network of local community teams, as I said before, and also it's local teams are a good way to get involved with real people, like physically, and participate in their events, and start getting to know more Ubuntu and ask them questions on how to get involved in there. So yeah,
and just the link in IRC to our community portal, community.ubuntu.com, which lists the different areas where you can get involved and how to get involved with those.
Any other comments before we move on to the next one, guys?
I would just add, pick something small to get started. There's aside from the actual contribution itself, there's a lot of learning the process and the community when you get involved. So pick something small that you can learn with, and just build on that. If you take one step, enjoy it, learn a little bit, take another step, learn a little bit more, and pretty soon you'll be, making big, major contributions. That's how I got started anyway. All right, next question. Nakanut asks, on the phone and tablet, how readily available is the released memory from closed apps? And have there been instances in development where the memory has been accessible? I'm not sure what you mean by accessible. So the way...
Security issue, I assume they're talking about that.
Talking about what, Alan?
I think the implication there is a security problem where one app can see another app's memory. I think it's...
Oh.
That's how I read it.
I don't think that's possible. I'm not sure what the mechanism is that does it. Probably something with AppArmor in the kernel that prevents that from happening. So yeah, I don't think that's a problem.
That's basic process isolation. I'm confused by the question a little bit.
So is for the first part of the question about releasing memory, the way the application lifecycle management works on the phone and tablet is when an app goes into the background, its process gets suspended, and then that app is a candidate for being closed by the system at any time. So if you start running out of RAM or system memory on the phone or tablet, it'll start killing some of the old processes that you haven't been using to free up memory for the ones that you are using. And then, of course, when you go to switch back to them, it'll launch it right back up again.
And it's worth noting that underneath all of this, it is standard Linux. So, you know, it's whatever the memory management that the Linux kernel does is what we do with a little bit on top.
And if you're an app developer and you're concerned about this, we've got an API, it's called State Saver, that you can add to your app, and basically you tell it what properties you want it to remember in the case your app is closed by the system. So you can save the current state of your app using this. You don't have to worry about writing it to a file and reading it back in. That's all done for you. So that if the system closes your app, the next time it's opened back up, it will automatically apply that state information back on top, so that your app comes right back up the way it was when it was killed.
You also just shared a link on IRC which talks about application confinement and how it works, and it also talks about memory and the app lifecycle, so that will also help.
Which link was that?
Yeah, just paste it into the wrong channel.
Oh, there it is.
That's a good link to read if you're curious.
All right, who wants to take the next question?
Yeah, okay. If I can find it. So the last one was about memory. Next one, Just Caracas. Will the background in the app be customizable again? It used to be before 1404, but now that setting doesn't work, and the white origami background stays. So this is talking about the background on the phone. I think Just Caracas is talking about. I think you've asked that question, Mike.
Yes,
of design.
I have. So the new Scopes API actually allows each scope to define its own background image, and that gets passed to the dash itself. Currently, the dash itself doesn't use that. It's hard-coded to these white origami backgrounds. But the long-term plan is to let each scope define its own. So the default scopes, the apps and music and whatnot, those may be customizable again using the same system settings, just by having them store the location of the file you want and using that in the scope itself. So that's not, it used to be hard-coded into the dash what background image to use, and now it's been moved into the scopes code, and they just need to finish wiring all the pieces together to make that work again. And there's another idea of who we can bring on. We can get maybe Thomas Voss or Thomas Strell on to talk about that.
Yeah, it would also be good to get someone of a more developer nature, one of the Unity 8 developers and people working on the shell, and someone like Savik maybe,
For that, we might want to get Michael Ruby.
We'll add them all to the list.
All right, I've just managed to get reminders. The emulator loaded. It takes a while when you're running a Hangout in parallel. Do we have any more questions? Because one thing I could do, and Nick suggested, I think it's a great idea to show reminders. But I don't want to take any time from other questions.
Yeah, we've got one that we missed because the question wasn't in all caps from 0x101. He's been deciding to go Linux on his web server and wants to know how secure Ubuntu server is. Will he have any problems with hackers or anything? So I've been running Ubuntu servers for a while now, and I've never had an issue with it. I've seen plenty of attempted attacks both on the web server and the SSH server, but nobody's ever gotten in. As long as you apply updates, set it to automatically apply security updates, you should be fine.
I agree, and I've generally found that the kind of compromises you see in the wild aren't packages that are in Ubuntu. They're the web apps that you run on top of Ubuntu. So things like, I'm not pointing the finger at anything, but things like WordPress, Drupal, Joomla, those kind of things, or some kind of PHP-based forum. Those things that sit on top, if you don't keep those and all the plugins and all the extensions up to date, those are the things that are likely to be the vector by which someone can get into your server. It's less likely that they can get in via some kernel vulnerability in Ubuntu or some problem with Apache or Lite or something like that. It's more likely the app's on top.
And of course, you know, like any system, there's always going to be bugs that somebody could exploit. We're no exception to that. But they do get patched quickly. So as long as you're applying patches as they come, then if there is a vulnerability, it's not going to be around for very long for you.
Right. We have a very attentive security team.
Very attentive security team. If anyone's had to try and get code through past them, they will know just how attentive to every little detail they are.
Yeah,
so
we've got an attentive set of users as well.
Yeah, and then of course it also depends on what you're doing with your server and how you maintain it. You know, no one's going to protect you if you have a passwordless root account open to the world. You know, those sorts of things. So practicing good security starts with you. So it really doesn't matter what system you have. You know, it's up to you to make sure you take effort to secure it. So that said, I don't, you know, Ubuntu definitely makes it easy. There's lots of tools. So.
Cool. All right. So next question from. Oh, sorry. Go on, Poppy.
No, it wasn't. I thought that was our final question, but it wasn't. Final one was: does a state saver work for HTML5 apps?
That's a good question. Let me see if that's one of the APIs that we have.
Yeah, I've not tried it myself, so I don't know from the HTML5 side.
It doesn't look like we have that right now. So, we can talk to the web apps guys and see if this is even going to be possible. I'm not sure. The state saver in QML really depends on the nature of QML to know when things change and to record those and to be able to reapply them when it loads the QML scene again. So I don't think that's one of the APIs that we're going to be able to easily port to HTML5 the way we did for things like Content Hub and online accounts.
All right. Okay, so I think we've gone through the list of questions for now. Remember, if you've got any questions about open source, Ubuntu, or any question to each one of us, to any one of us, just feel free to prepend with question, and then we'll go through them. I got reminders, the Evernote client running, and I can perhaps show a quick demo so that you guys get familiar with it and you start testing it. So let me see if I can share my screen. Okay, can you guys see my screen and two windows in there?
Yes.
Cool. All right, so I've got two things in here, which is essentially the same application running on the phone and on the desktop. What you see on the left is the Reminders app started from the desktop, and you see that it's got a desktop mode in which I can just read notes, and they appear on the right panel. On the right, I've got the Ubuntu emulator running for in phone mode, which is also executing the Reminders app. What's nice about it as well is that Reminders is compiled as x86 in here, so it's running natively on the emulator as well. So what we see in both is essentially the list of nodes that it's fetched, and it's using my developer account at Evernote. And as you see, what it does as well is, as you're scrolling up, it's also fetching on demand the images that are attached to Evernote. To every node. And on the left, on the desktop app, or on the desktop version of the app, you can see that we're using layouts to have a specific layout, which would also work in tablet mode. With these, I've got I can see the notes as I click on each one of them. They're just loading on the right. And if I change the UI, then, or if I change the size of the window, I switch through the different UIs. So so right now we're in desktop mode or desktop layout, and here we can see the same layout as in the phone next to it. What we can do as well is to go through the list of notebooks. Also, the application is completely translatable. You can see that I'm using it in my local in here, and I can see the list of notebooks for each one of them. What the notebook does is that when you click on it, it brings you to the list of notes for that particular notebook. So you don't see much of a change on the list of notes on the left. Also, the Reminders guys implemented the new header for the SDK recently. It's not landed yet, but it's on a branch that's proposed to be landed. And what you see in here is exactly the same interface using the new header. And actually, on the left, you can still see the old header. So yeah, you can see the list of actions that you can choose for each one of the nodes, or in this case for all of the nodes. And also you've got the default action for creating a new node. So this is something that I can do right now. So I'm just going to call it community. Oops, of course I have to use the on-screen keyboard. So community Q Q&A. I can also get the capitals right, and I can just write test to make it quick. With these icons, what I can do is to add an image from the gallery app using Content Hub. I can also open up a camera and take a picture and attach it to the note, or re-edit the note. In this case, I'm just going to save it here because I don't have any pictures on the emulator. And then there you go. We've got this note from the that I've just created now. Yeah, one thing that I've noticed is that for some reason, this is an old image of the emulator. So I'm using, I haven't been updating it for a while, and the nodes are using the Ubuntu web view, and they tend to be black on this one. I don't really know why, but we need to find out for subsequent images of the emulator. And yeah, I mean, every time you create a node, it syncs it to the Evernote servers. So this is using Evernote as a third-party service, and it's using Ubuntu Online, the Ubuntu Online Accounts API to securely transfer those nodes to. And yeah, this is created by a community of designers and developers. This design has been, this visual design has entirely been created by Lucas Romero from the Ubuntu community design team, and the code has actually been created by Michael Zanetti, who happens to work on Canonical but works on the app on his spare time, and Riccardo Padovani. They are the main two developers, but we've had contributions from other people as well. But yeah, and you'll probably see this on an image very soon, so you can start testing it. I said you can already download it or install it on your phone from the Software Center. And that's pretty much it for Evernote. I'll just see if there are any questions, and then we can get on with those. Well, Kinzo was asking if I'm using XChat. No, I'm not. I'm using XChat GNOME. I prefer the interface, and from what I've been told, XChat doesn't tell you when you're disconnected, whereas with XChat GNOME, yeah, it does tell me. So, yeah, that's my personal preference, but other folks might have other suggestions on clients.
So Spartacus asked, what's the quickest, smartest way to get involved in developing for apps for the Ubuntu phone? Is learning HTML5 enough? The short answer is yes, learning HTML5 is enough. That's one of our first-class supported languages. We also provide a UI toolkit on top of HTML5 that matches the UI toolkit that we use for QML. And some other platform services, like I mentioned previously, we have Content Hub and Online Accounts APIs that are accessible from there. You can also use QML to develop your app. This is another very easy language to learn, and also uses JavaScript. If you're interested, we've got a huge developer portal with a lot of content and API docs and tutorials on it at developer.ubuntu.com. There's a whole section devoted to apps. So if you're interested in writing apps, that's the place to go. That'll get you started. And then we've also got communities on Google+ and a page on Facebook devoted to Ubuntu app development, where you can hear from other people what they're doing, ask questions, get support, that kind of thing. And we have an IRC channel as well. It is #ubuntu-app-devel. And most of us are in there every day, most hours of the day. So if you ever get stuck and you need some live support, you can always use that. All right, we've got about 10 minutes left, a little bit less than 10 minutes left. So if anyone's got some final questions, you should be getting them into IRC now. We've got a minute or two delay, so don't wait until the very end to try and get your question in, or it will get missed. Get them in now.
There's a question from Belkins that says the Reminders app uses Evernote Developer Sandbox and not the Evernote server that Evernote uses. When will it move to the Evernote server? When the first release comes? That's one for you, David, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think in a nutshell, that's pretty much it. We're working with Evernote for them to review the application right now, and we're working with them to get an API key to use the production server. I think we will see this very soon, and what we are thinking of is to have the possibility to switch between the production and the development server. This is essentially what we've been discussing, but yeah, definitely reminders will be available to use for using it with the production server of Evernote soon. So you'll be able to use it as an Evernote client, both on the phone and on the desktop with your regular Evernote accounts. And also,
just real quick, I want to, go ahead and finish.
Okay, cool. Just to finish off, something about the question afterwards. So I pinged David Barth and Alex Abreu regarding the State Saver API, and it seems that, as we were saying before, it's not yet available on HTML5, but there seems to be a branch with an implementation in HTML5, and Alex is saying that he needs to revive that branch, and it might be possible in the future to have State Saver in HTML5, but with some caveats, which are probably related to what Mike was mentioning earlier on, like going around, working around QML specific features. So yeah, that was it.
All right. So I just wanted to plug something that Alan's been doing. We've had several questions about specific apps and app development. And Alan's been running our Core Apps project. And during the last online summit, there was discussion about running again some hack days on IRC, which we've done in the past to get people started contributing to our core apps. And that's a great way to learn about app development on Ubuntu. You can join active teams with great mentors already who are there to help you. So if you're interested in that, I would definitely recommend you get with Alan and find out when those hack days are going to be, and come and participate with them.
Yeah, we're probably going to have one in the next few weeks, and we're probably going to change it a little bit and focus on both core apps and some community apps as well, so we can not only improve and fix up the core apps, fix bugs in the core apps, and introduce new developers to developing core apps. We can also help individual developers who have their own apps and want to bring those along and maybe get a bit of advice or look for additional developers for their apps as well. But I'll blog a bit about that when it comes a bit closer to the time. Is that the last question?
No, we've got two more. 0x101 asks, what would be a good skill or certificate to learn so I can contribute my time to the development of Ubuntu server? And unfortunately, we don't have anyone here from the server team.
I've been asked this question by people who have left university and are looking for ways to get their name out there, and it seems common these days that recruiters and potential employers look at your contribution to open source projects. So things like looking at your commit history on Bazaar or on GitHub, or looking at a published list of contributions to open source projects is a good way to build up a portfolio. So rather than looking to get a qualification, looking to build a portfolio of experience is often more valuable, or as valuable.
And that's true no matter what kind of development you're going into, whether it's server, whether it's client, front-end stuff. There's really no substitute for experience, and with open source you can show the actual code also, which is a big selling point. I know once I started doing
what
that,
I would suggest is that if you have a certain package of
Did we just lose Daniel?
I think so.
It's a really long pause for effect here.
Yeah.
He's taking a deep breath.
Yeah. Daniel is probably going to talk about helping maintain packages in the archives. Hopefully he'll come back to life soon and be able to finish that thought. But if your interest is specifically on this server, I would definitely recommend that you learn OpenStack, which is really the main open source cloud software right now, and learn about Juju and Juju Charms, because that's the orchestration that we're providing on top of Ubuntu on these clouds to let you manage entire data centers easily. So you can join #Juju on Freenode IRC and talk to all of the friendly people in there. You can go to cloud.ubuntu.com and juju.ubuntu.com to get more information about those.
Okay, we're pretty much out of time. Any final questions?
Right, so we were going to talk about the next meeting and how that's going to run.
Oh, yes. So we asked for suggestions, and we've built up a list of a dozen or so people we're going to approach, and we are going to keep this time. I think this time and this day seem to work quite well for most of us. Am I right?
I think so, yeah.
But we'll reduce down to 1 or 2 people. I think it works well when we've got 2, because then we can have, you know, one person managing the IRC questions and someone else doing the talking, rather than having these pregnant pauses where we're staring at the screen reading what people are typing. But we'll reduce down and then rotate round, and we'll publicise ahead of time who we're having as guests, so you can prepare your questions.
Excellent.
All right, so we'll try
but yeah, essentially the next one will be at the same time. But as Alan is saying, yeah, we'll make sure that we announce in advance so you guys can join us. Cool. Sorry, Mike, I interrupted you.
I was going to say the same thing. We'll announce in advance who we're going to have on and what we're going to be talking about. But of course, no matter who we have on or what that specific topic is, you can bring any kind of questions to these sessions. Anything about Ubuntu or community or anything like that.
And also give us your feedback. Let us know if these are valuable, if you find demos like the one David gave about reminders useful. You know, if you want to see more of those thrown in amongst the questions to spice things up a bit, then let us know.
And if there's any topics also that we didn't cover today that you'd like to have covered, let us know.
Cool. Now it's time for my next meeting, my phone is telling me.
All right, nice to see the alarms are working.
Yep.
All right, I think with that we can wrap it up here today. So I guess we'll say just see you all guys next week. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks everyone for your questions, and essentially keep them coming. So with that, until next week.
See you later, guys.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.